Good morning, everybody. I hope you had a good night. I make the mistake of, like some of us, going back home to the Garden State to be with the family and sleep in my own bed, but it's a struggle in the morning, particularly with the trains and the flooding, and Jersey Transit's got a lot to work on, right, Director? So I want to be brief here because she came to hear them. I'm really honored. I asked Senator Addabbo to do this in the inaugural track 3 years ago, and we had a good time. Ray Lesniak was supposed to join us, and he crapped out. But we had fun at his expense. The senator is obviously someone who is a thought leader, very transformational, chair of the Gaming Committee in New York, and he has the eyes of the world on him because most folks out of America don't understand why iGaming has taken so long, and particularly in the state of New York where it's surrounded by iGaming. And hopefully the senator will educate us a little bit about that, in addition to a lot of other things he's working on, very well respected on both sides of the aisle, and he's got political courage because he's got to deal with unions on this iGaming issue. Director Rebuck and I chatted about, I don't know, a week ago or so, Director, and he told me he was coming to this event and was hoping he would have an opportunity to speak. I said, are you kidding me? You're coming on this panel. Director Rebuck, after decades of service to the state and over a decade of service, the longest serving director of the New Jersey DG, just retired on Friday. But he still has a state phone, he's still working, and people are still treating him as if he's still working. But he's going to Florida tomorrow with his wife. So, Director Rebuck, we're going to go with you first. Please just give us a snippet of what you've dealt with in this industry, not the brick and mortar casino side so much, in your 10 plus years as the director of the platinum standard of regulators.
Thanks, Bill, for the kind words. And again, it's a pleasure being with the senator. We're good friends and hope to be an ally of his as he continues to fight the good fight in New York to essentially do what is inevitable. So, Bill, you had to be tone dead if you were here not to hear yesterday that there's a bright future only if and when online gambling is regulated by the states. We've heard all the stats. The problem you have right now is that, well identified, you have over 40 states in the United States that treat online gambling as a criminal act. You have another 20 states that treat online sports wagering as a criminal act. And all the focus on online gaming is on those two types of wagering activities. That balkanized approach to online gaming is something that needs to be addressed by legislatures and policymakers. And I say that because the internet and the power of the internet and the power of technology that you're all familiar with, you're in the technology business, is going to drive opportunities here in areas that we're just scratching the surface. And gaming is no different than other commercial activities that the online industry will continue to drive you to have do things that you never contemplated even 10 years ago. And the balkanized approach that I talk about is because everybody seems to fail to address the enigma of fantasy sports. Is it sports wagering? Is it gambling? Is it skill-based? Only 5 states don't allow it in some form, but it's not regulated. And so all the protections you have for consumers and business opportunities and the employees, the economic development, is just happening without any regulation, significant regulation, that would require that to be overseen in a way just like you have online gambling, casino gambling, online sports wagering. And then you have this other group of people who have, what we heard yesterday again, social gaming. It's not gambling because it's skill. Let's harken back to the days of online poker. Some of the best law firms in the United States wrote legal opinions that poker is a game of skill. That ended because the federal government decided enough of this nonsense. And then there was Black Friday, and online poker has never been considered a game other than gambling. So when we look to regulation, it has to be comprehensive, coordinated, and collaborative, and entail more than what we're talking about as regards to casino and sports only. And there's opportunities there for everybody in this room, because the regulation, the power regulation, allows it to be mainstreamed and protect all the entities that need to be protected as part of this. So my position is, Bill, yes, it's 10 years, it's still evolving, and it's really in its infancy stage. And you have visionaries like the senator that recognize it's got to be regulated, and for all the reasons that you heard yesterday, and more. So that's what my perspective is after 10 years. A lot more work to be done.
Always. Thank you, Director. Senator, before we get into the current legislation, you know I have to kibitz with you a little bit, because we talked about this 2 years ago when I got in trouble for calling New York the socialist gaming empire of the world. And I got beat up. Governor Hochul beat me up. You beat me up. Do you believe it was a mistake, or is it just an evolution, the tax rate for sports?
Neither. I just think, we look at, for mobile sports betting, we look at where we've come, and it was always a work in progress. We never really knew what New York could do. We knew we had potential. The 51%, it's something that the previous governor had his eyes on. Myself and my counterpart in the Assembly, Gary Pretlow, we had a different vision going through the casinos, but the governor, and so it's a negotiation. As the final product in any state that has any type of gaming, it's governor driven. So the governor saw fit that 51% would benefit the state, certainly. At a time with post-COVID, we had a $6 billion deficit. And in retrospect, 2 years later, I guess we did okay in mobile sports betting. We're roughly now $2 billion in revenue, $1.7 billion for education, obviously breaking national records. So it's, again, you never know. You know the potential New York has, and I use the same argument with iGaming. We know the potential New York has. The question is the details. And that's where I'm hoping that we can go forward with iGaming. If there's an appetite or initiative to have this conversation with the governor's office and with union and others, that we can go forward, because New York has such a great potential. If we look and build upon what we've done with mobile sports betting, and again, the success there, we know the participants for iGaming is that much greater. We know the potential is that much greater. The likelihood of New York being successful is that much greater. So it's a conversation I'm ready to have.
Think there's a chance to revisit the tax rate? I know you've talked about doing that.
It's funny because, the discussion of the tax rate was always something that bubbled up around the budget time. But now with the looming possibility, I guess, of iGaming, the tax rate of 51% seems to be a non-issue. It's amazing. It's just not, we don't speak about it anymore because, again, we have this opportunity of moving past the 51% and looking at iGaming.
Senator, let's talk a little bit about the bill, if we can. You have in the bill, it's like a comprehensive bill because you have fixed odds horse racing, thank you very much. You have iLottery, which we'll talk about later, and you have iGaming. Does it stand a better chance in your mind weighing the turf to have all three together? Are any of the three items more of a drag because that's a pretty heavy-duty piece of legislation for any state to do, let alone New York.
Yeah, I guess I like complexity. I appreciate the work of my team and the input of many in the industry and throughout the state on the bill. And we are in, I think, our B version, our second version. There may be a C, D, and E, who knows? But the idea here is I like the complexity of it because, again, I think that's where we're headed as a state. We could talk about iGaming, we could talk about iLottery and fixed odds because that's, I believe, the national perception of New York is that it's a growth state. Maybe under the previous governor, Governor Cuomo, we couldn't talk about this, and now under Governor Hochul, there's more of a possibility of expanding New York gaming. And that's, again, I like that perception if we go forward in a very methodical, safe way. So I like the components of the bill, I do. And to have that conversation, whether it's all three, iGaming, iLottery, fixed odds, or whether it's separate components, I welcome the conversation because we can only advance as a state in terms of regulating and not only the revenue, but actually the ability to help someone who may have a problem gaming issue. Because right now in New York, and as we know, March is Problem Gaming Awareness Month, right now in New York, if you wanted to help someone with a iGaming issue, you really cannot help them. And I know a reporter out there criticized me for saying that New York doesn't have the capability. Of course we do if the person themselves reach out to the Hope line and says, hey, I have a problem. But that's only helping them partially. To maximize the potential to help someone, it's to use the data to figure out their pattern and to try and help them that way. The early intervention is critical. So I like these components, but again, we can only have that going forward with these components, either collectively or separately, if there's an initiative and willingness to have that conversation going forward.
To have a regulated licensed market. I mean, you helped me years ago in introducing me to Oasis, and that's a phenomenal organization. And they agree with your position. We know the black market will continue to grow and flourish without regulation. We're not saying regulation will make it disappear, but it does have somewhat of a tamp down impact. And we also know that there's no way to monitor and collect the data to help consumers with addiction problems. So what do you think the chances, somebody predicted yesterday, I forget which panel, that there would be the over was 1.5 states would pass iGaming. I don't happen to agree with that. I think it's one or none. What do you think the chances are for New York to move this year?
It's tough. Again, it needs to be, in my opinion, governor-driven. And if the governor sees a $9 billion deficit next year or the possibility of cuts to health care, we can use this iGaming money. If we do it this year, we could use the iGaming money, which roughly is in the vicinity of $800 million or so. We could use that for health care. Previously iGaming, or I should say gaming money, was used for education, and every year the gaming industry gives education in New York about $4 billion. But because this is a new product, you could use the iGaming money for healthcare, for transportation, for colleges, higher education. You could use it pretty much for anything you need to in the budget. And I choose healthcare only because it's the second or one of the largest portions of our $230 billion budget. And it faces tough fiscal times. So it really is governor-driven, and she would have to get us all to the table, the union, the legislators, and everything, and say, okay, how do we go forward? It needs to be navigated by the governor, in my opinion. We are in a holding pattern until there's a need, and it may not be a want that they want to do iGaming in New York. It may be a need, like COVID brought on the mobile sports betting for New York because of the fiscal impact of the COVID. It may be a fiscal need or other need that the governor sees that we do this. So we stand ready, and we'll see over the next.
That'll be what pushes it over the top, as opposed to concerns about RG or black market. It'll be the fiscal impact and potentially job creation. Because we know what Live Dealer, let's talk about that a little bit, David, what Live Dealer's done in New Jersey under your tenure.
Well, last night George Rover and I were talking together, and when we were first looking at internet gaming being legalized in the state of New Jersey, and this goes back to about 2011, we were very naive. We didn't have the benefit of the fintech industry giving us information. It was still in its nascent stages. And so we naively were thinking to ourselves, the easiest operation for an online gaming to move from a retail setting to people who are consumers in your state to understand how online gaming works is to essentially have a live dealer studio that broadcasts across the internet, and people will see human beings. They'll interact with them, they'll talk to them, they'll chat with them. And so we fully expected the first types of online games to be approved to be live dealer. It wasn't. Live dealer didn't come year one. Live dealer didn't come year two. And we kind of like, okay, I guess we're wrong. You know, we don't know. And Europe wasn't coming to the European community, wasn't coming in with the product. Was certainly not going to be generated in the United States because they lacked the technology to think in this area. And then year three hit, and Tillman Fertitta, Golden Nugget, Tom Winter took a chance. And that exploded. And everybody has live dealer now because it is so popular to the consumers to engage in that type of game and interaction online. And so, yeah, an example of takes time, takes research, takes data collection, and totally different community today than where it was in 2011 because of live dealer. And all the other game content has come into play because of entrepreneurs, innovation, and the tech community or fintech community seeing opportunities to do even more and better. And I constantly have to deal with other states who are fearful of internet gaming, and I tell them as a regulator perspective, the tools the fintech industry brings to a regulator, forget about what they bring to the industry. As a regulator, you have more information, you have more tools at your disposal, you have more power and data and evidence of how to regulate the industry than you do in any retail environment. And those tools are wonderful to customize your review of individuals who may be having problems, to certainly monitor everything that's being done, every hand played, every amount wagered, every loss. You have data that is so valuable, and in New Jersey, we, I guess in hindsight, probably made a smart move. We mandated that all the data is saved and retained for 10 years. I was like, wow. So needless to say, the server community was very happy with all the data that's now being stored all over New Jersey related to gambling in the last 13 years. But to answer your question, Bill, yeah, when I hear the senator speak, I mean, it really boils down to one issue when you're dealing with expansion to other states, and that is the question, who will benefit and profit from operating internet gaming? And the legislature and the governors, that they said, they really only have three choices to answer that question, three structures. One, follow the European model. The community, the online community, goes right, direct, untethered to the patron and consumer. Don't have much of it in the United States. Hasn't really taken off. Tennessee, as we all know, has it for sports wagering. Nobody else really has it. It's not seen as it's seen as really maybe too much competition. And who's going to benefit from this industry? Obviously, all these foreign countries that have the skill set, their technology coming in. We don't have it here in the United States. We don't have it. It wasn't developed. It's coming, but it's not mature. Second group, the state itself. The state itself will operate online gambling and regulate itself. You can do that. You see all sorts of states who have decided that their lottery commissions now should also engage in sports or online sports and iLottery and do things that they've never contemplated when they first had lotteries. And the third model, I think, is the best. The senator tried to pull it off in New York. It's New Jersey model. Who benefits? The existing retail establishments have a monopoly. Casinos, racetracks or racinos, retail, 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 tribal lands, tribal commercials, casinos. They have the monopoly. They have the monopoly, so there's really no cannibalization. You have just given them a monopoly, expand their operational benefits and operations into a whole new area. And they have retail, they have online, and their business judgments they live with. They live with. Some do it better than others. But that's competition. That's the nature of our society. And so that model, when you hear the fear mongering of cannibalization, loss of jobs, I have 13 years of records that show the casino industry in New Jersey, which is challenged. The retail casino industry in New Jersey is challenged on many fronts. Okay? Hundreds of jobs today remain unfilled. Remain unfilled. And you can all read the numbers, they're all public, and you can all see the benefits that the existing workforce has in not being cannibalized, not losing money. The industry's making more money than it ever has. It's just that they're sharing the revenue with partners. And some of the companies have made the decision, we're not sharing it anymore, we're acquiring the company. Leo Vegas, acquired by MGM. William Hill, acquired by Caesars. So they expand their business model, diversify their business model in a way that the licensees, are truly the beneficiary to control its future. And like I said, we haven't seen any significant job decreases. I understand the union's concerned. I'd be more concerned with the union if you're going with Model 1 or Model 2. But if you go with the New Jersey model, I don't see cannibalization. The data doesn't show it, and the job numbers are steady. And so it's a fear factor because of change, competition. I understand that. And you heard it yesterday, education, education, education. But they're your three choices as legislators and policymakers, and pick the one that works best for you. Or the last choice is don't do anything. And if you do nothing, guess what? It's still there, and it operates in every of the 50 states today. Everyone has online gambling. Everyone, even Utah.
Senator, we went through this in New Jersey early on. We had a governor that was a real trailblazer thought leader. And he's the one that made the decision, because our first bill didn't have online tethered with offline, with retail. And he said to us, look, you want to get this done soon? Maybe we should use this model. And the frustration was, and David's dealt with this on multiple occasions, not only with iGaming, but with fixed odds horse racing and some other verticals, where you throw out a negative, oh my God, cannibalization. You do a study, nobody believes it. It's baloney. So I'm hoping, because some of your really good colleagues who are working under your leadership are talking to us about getting the unions in Atlantic City to talk about what it's meant for them. iGaming has been a bit, not the only piece, but a bit of a savior to the retail casino industry. And what's funny about it, and Governor Christie was masterful, if he had signed the first iGaming bill, remember this? We had 4 casinos close right after he vetoed that bill. So there was no cannibalization. Can you imagine if we passed that bill and launched? They would have blamed iGaming for it. So that was a benefit. Moving forward, do you see the unions being receptive to that kind of conversation, or is it somewhat like the conversations with tribes, which is no mas?
You know, I'm always an optimist. I always think there's a way. You know, if there's going to be progress, and you can't stop technology. We've seen it with mobile sports betting. We see with the expansion of iGaming that you can't stop technology and progress. So I am always the optimist. There is no hurdle in front of us that we cannot overcome in terms of iGaming. If it's cannibalization, I understand the issue. I acknowledge the issue. We put in the bill. We put $25 million as a fund every year to protect the brick and mortar workers. We do not study upon study, but let's be honest. The issue is out there. We need to address it. We can, and I've tried in the bill. It shows a willingness again to try to address the issue, but we can only move forward if there's again that other willingness on the other side to discuss and to negotiate. Without that, it can't be a one-sided negotiation, so no legislator alone can do it. It needs to be a two-way conversation, or at least a willingness to have that conversation. There is no hurdle too big to advance iGaming in New York.
That's very optimistic. Ladies and gentlemen, please join with me in thanking Senator Addabbo and Director David Rebuck.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good rest of your day.